Welcome to Connect with County Leaders. Here's your host, Bryan Hill.
Hello and welcome to Connect with County Leaders. I'm Bryan Hill, and on this special edition of the podcast, we're going to look back and recap the exceptional guests and topics that I've had the privilege to bring to you throughout this past year. From public safety to economic development, supporting our vulnerable populations, caring for our pets, and yes, basketball, and so much more that we've covered in 2024. I've enjoyed speaking with all the featured county leaders this year, and I hope you enjoy this small selection of each of these guests from this year's Connect with County Leaders podcast.
We're using our new threat assessment management personnel to identify persons who are on a pathway to violence, and we're intervening more often than we ever have. So, all too often, police departments are on the right side of boom as opposed to the left side. So whether it's the threat assessment management focus that we have now, or whether it's the emergency substantial risk order focus that we have in Fairfax County, we know people in mental health and behavioral crisis are prone to acts of violence. So we're intervening more often and earlier than we ever have before.
So our co-responder model is what you're getting to. So before we get to Chief Butler, why don't we talk a little bit about the co-responder model, and then we'll juxtapose that to Chief Butler because he's also a part of that. So Kevin, why don't you keep teasing out the co-responder model?
Yes, sir. So as of October 31st, and we're catching up, and by the end of this year, we'll have our full 2023 data. But our 4 co-responder teams have interacted on 1,800 calls for service. And on half of those calls for service, the issue was mitigated right there at the scene with a police officer and a trained clinician. The other half of those encounters resulted in a higher level of care and diversion. So we're not putting our handcuffs on people in crisis anymore. We're diverting them to the right place so they can simply get better.
Risk reduction is also an equity connection. There's an equity connection. Right. And with regard to One Fairfax, that's another way of cementing or calcifying the work in One Fairfax by doing risk reduction. It should not matter where in the county you live that gets the same services from police and fire as other areas. So the risk reduction platform has to be very focal and organic and local, because that too is equity.
What happened during that time, looking at unemployment, which shot up to about 12%, it was a big GDP slowdown. We went in a place where we hadn't been before, and really we were blessed with the county investing and the work that DEI, the Department of Economic Initiatives, did with the small businesses, because they really needed help bridging it. The technology companies and other companies that we work with, they didn't need that kind of help. Correct. What they needed was the continuing, connection with their clients and being able to grow their business. If you reflect on that and look right now, so the GDP of Fairfax County is $134 billion. That is more than half of the GDP of the entire Northern Virginia, which is $276 billion. If our Northern Virginia economy was a state, we'd be the 24th largest state. We'd be the 48th largest country in the world. So it is a huge economy. So that just the size of that economy, really lends to you're making the investments for the long run. Right. And one of the things that the county did back in 2019 was starting investing in talent. And that talent work has now become a competitive position for us. When I arrived in 2019, we had 15,000 open positions in Fairfax. We now have 58,000 open positions in Fairfax. And part of that is because we keep helping our companies believe it or not, get talent. Over the next 2 days, on the 30th and 31st, we will have over 2,000 people go through our career fair with 45 companies trying to hire 7,000 positions. So we really right now have more jobs than positions. Our business establishments have grown from 36,000 pre-pandemic to 43,000 now, almost 20%. So the economy is growing. It's very robust. But the question is, how do we handle the transition of this work from home? What is the opportunity there? For the traded economy, bringing the money in from the outside to here, is artificial intelligence. It continues to be cyber. Yes. And eventually we're looking at quantum as a future.
It's because what we try to do every single day is create opportunities for people that live here. And there's lots of opportunities to be had, but we know that not everyone has always shared in the wealth that's here, in the prosperity that's here. And so every single one of our projects, in fact, our team every year develops a work plan. And we have dozens and dozens of active projects. For every single one of those projects, we identify the equity goal that's associated with that and the strategic plan pillar that's associated with that, so that we know we're driving to the right ends, and that we're working collaboratively with all of our partners, all of our colleagues, for a more equitable, economy that really helps set us up for future growth.
Well, one of the things that you and I have talked about this, Bryan, is that One Fairfax can't be separate. It can't be sitting alone as its own program, kind of to the side. One Fairfax needs to be integrated in everything we do in Fairfax County. That's something the chairman and you and so many, including Carla Bruce, obviously, have pushed on. And we need to make sure that One Fairfax comes into each district. And there is what I was talking about cultural hub. When it comes to Mason District, we need to make sure that everyone has not only a seat at the table, but a voice, because anyone can have a seat. Now the real power is when you bring in communities from Skyline, when you bring in Bailey's, Seven Corners, Annandale, Lincolnia. When you bring all those amazing parts together, and when you start hearing from those voices saying this is what our community needs, these are concerns of the community, we need to fix this, we need to work on this, or even better, this is working. Let's push on what's working, because it's not always a negative thing, right? Constituents aren't always coming and saying, this is wrong, this is wrong. A lot of times they're saying, this is working great, let's push on this, or have you thought about this? One of those things that we are working on as a cultural hub is bringing art and music, spotlighting small business in our community, because Mason District isn't a place you drive through or drive by, Bryan, but it's a place you come, it's a destination point. And the more we're able to spotlight those small businesses, that wonderful food, the coffee shops, all of those wonderful things that make up Mason District, more people are going to want to come. But we got to spotlight all the good things that are happening in Mason District, and my team, myself, the supervisor's office, we're really working hard to do that. One great example is last week, or 2 weeks ago, we kicked off our art task force. Okay. And that is to show there is so much art talent. There's so much low-hanging fruit, long-term things we can be doing when it comes to art in Mason District. Let's use these amazing constituents, these residents who love art, who are artists. Let's hear from them. What can we be doing better? What is the low-hanging fruit that we can be doing?
Many of the individuals that we've been serving through Lorton, it's their first time engaging with us in any capacity. In fact, our most recent vaccine clinic at Lorton, most of the folks had never had any kind of service from Fairfax County Animal Shelter. So it's a wonderful way. Lorton has just been a fantastic footprint to serve that side of the county. And the staff have been doing a fantastic job supporting the services and needs at both locations.
So how long have you been open in Lorton?
So we opened officially to the public the end of October. We had our grand opening. And then we started doing adoptions and also surrender appointments shortly thereafter.
So since October of 2023, we've opened in Lorton. And how many new, or percentage-wise, new folks coming to your new facility that has not been a part of Mike Fry's facility, Animal Shelter up North County? Do you see a lot of new people coming now? I mean, you mentioned it, but do we see a volume?
Well, we have. I mean, the first day, our opening ceremony, we had 1,000 people come through our front doors. So if that is any indicator of just the excitement of the community to have this Lorton campus open. And we've actually had so many residents come in and offer to volunteer that we're in a backlog. I think we're 3 to 4 months that we're asking folks to wait while we onboard and train. I mean, we've just had that level of excitement from the community. And we have so many scouts coming in and wanting to do scout projects and to support the animals. And we just recently launched our Reading Tales program at Lorton. So that's where children get to come in and read a bedtime story to one of our shelter pets.
That's awesome.
But we're also continually expanding more programs at the Lorton shelters. So I mentioned we have our pet food pantry, and we've been expanding the footprint of our pet food pantry because we know not everybody can get to the Lorton campus. So we're also working with like Lorton Community Action Center and other organizations that are providing food to the community. And so we're having little pop-up shelters with some of these organizations so we can even spread our work even further into the community, so beyond the shelter walls.
Fairfax County has been for many years now the safest jurisdiction of its size, the safest large jurisdiction in the United States of America. That means we have the lowest violent crime rate. So our goal is to maintain that every single year. And even if you look in our region, other jurisdictions that were sometimes compared to Montgomery County, not to pick on them, but similar from a socioeconomic standpoint, similar size, their violent crime rate is almost twice the violent crime rate in Fairfax County. So our goal always has to be to maintain that. And I think the way we do it is by maintaining and building on the strong partnerships between our police department and the community. You know, we've been doing community policing for a long time in Fairfax County, and we're continuing to innovate to ensure that we do it better to keep the community safe. But the other thing I'll say is, you know, there's the data, right? And we know that the facts and the data demonstrate that Fairfax County is the safest jurisdiction, large jurisdiction in the country. But you also have to think about how people feel, right? And we have to realize we are in an era where the media and some political actors, quite frankly, want people to be afraid. They want people to feel unsafe. And the media that people consume, right, is oftentimes dominated by the negative, dominated by the small number of serious crimes that occur. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us who are in a position of trust, elected office or other, to make sure people understand the facts, the reality in terms of the safe nature of Fairfax County, and that we continue to do everything we can to keep that.
Right now it's all about housing the unhoused. And I'm not saying sheltering the unhoused.
Yeah.
It's housing the unhoused. We need to start thinking outside of the box. We as nonprofit agencies or organizations and county community, it's, you know, the answer isn't building more shelters because numbers going up. We need a more affordable housing, but we also have to understand what affordable housing is to the population that is unhoused. We do a great job in the county with affordable housing for, you know, for teachers and for public safety. When I'm talking about affordable housing, I'm talking more about housing for all. It's for people that have serious mental illness that aren't going to be able to afford fair market rent or even low income rent.
Yeah.
It's people who have been through the system over and over and over again that need permanent supports. Permanent supportive housing is one thing that is extremely expensive because it is housing with very low rent to the participant with services attached.
Right.
But it is the only way we're going to be able to keep them out of jail.
Right.
It's the only way we're going to be able to keep them out of the emergency rooms. It's the only way we're going to be able to keep them out of shelters. And all of those things are a burden on taxpayers.
Yeah.
Paying for those beds in those facilities, and it's much cheaper that if we can provide that housing to individuals. And again, it's thinking out of the box. You know, it's not the traditional housing that we've thought of all this time. If we truly want to end homelessness, it's thinking outside of the box.
Well, all through my career, and that's 20 years in Baltimore, I've known Fairfax as the leaders in technology and innovation. And I can't take credit for it, but now I'm here. And we're continuing that legacy. And so in the next few months, we're updating our systems to be able to handle a lot more than a phone call. And so in the future, you'll be calling 911 through video, of course, text message. You can send us pictures. But this system can also send us data. data from your vehicle, from your refrigerator, from your alarm system. So we're really getting into the future. But let me talk a little bit about language translation, which it's my favorite. We'll be able to instantly translate 170 languages, over 170 languages. And we don't have to wait for an interpreter. And using AI, when somebody calls 911, it will detect the language they're speaking, and it will display to us in English, and then we will respond back in English, and it will display to them in the language that they called us. So we're really excited about that. It's going to help us respond to calls faster, and it gives everyone access to 911, which is very important to us.
I've always heard you talk about mindset. I love that. When you and we talked, the book, we read it, but what would be your advice?
Man, find something you love to do, and really go after it. I'd also say you're never too late. It's never too late in life to change course and pursue your dream. Go after what you want. I'd say do it unapologetically. And I'd also say never ever, be afraid to speak up about what you believe in. I think there's certain times in the history of our world where people are brave enough to say what they believed, or not brave enough to say what they believe. And I just look at it years later when the question is, what side of it were you on? If you could be asked that question, like Muhammad Ali was a very divisive figure at a point in time. And I remember his funeral and the droves of people, and it was nationally broadcasted, and he's a legend and a great American now. So I just would say always follow your gut and try to be on the right side of history.
It's easy to promote and to establish a college of public health in the middle of a pandemic, right? Now it seems like an obvious thing to do. When I came, there was our dean at the time wanted to pursue this. The pandemic was really coming in full force at the time. The easiest thing for us to do would have been to put it on hold and say, okay, we'll pick this up after we deal with the pandemic issues. My philosophy is no, this is the time to actually accelerate into this, because we believe that we actually can provide support for people. We can better provide care for people if we have this public health entity. And as you know, the propagation of COVID-19 in this country and in our region was not just a medical issue, it was a public health issue, right? It extended way beyond the boundaries of treatment and care for the disease. It got into transmission and how we manage systems and infrastructure, how we talk to people and manage engagement relative to how they are to respond and operate and behave in an environment where there are pathogens of that ilk. All of that is a purview of public health. It is exactly what is needed. And quite honestly, we don't believe we're done with pandemics globally. We don't believe we're done with pandemics in the US. And so we think this is an area where we should continue to promote and grow and be well positioned for an uncertain future in this regard.
With the large number of mail ballots and with the early voting, some people are concerned, is it secure? Is it safe? Can people vote twice? That's no. Yes, it is safe. Yes, it is secure. And people can never vote twice because we make sure that we only send ballots to registered voters and we only get ballots back from the individual who requested it. We have 2 people check everything. It comes down to the staff the election officers, they're trained very well. And it also comes down to the security of the ballots, the security of the voting system. At every step of the way, we take whatever time, as you say, whatever time it takes to make sure things are done right.
Well, you know, election integrity is the foundation of democracy, and you're doing an excellent job. We are in a place where we protect voter data and the accuracy of the voter rolls to prevent the fraud, and you guys have done an excellent job last election, because I remember you and I talking about a lot of stuff that was going on. We're not going to mention all of it.
Right.
Shouldn't mention any of it, actually.
Right.
But you caught a couple, which was great. What's the process this year? Same process? Have you enhanced the process?
You know what they say about elections? It's like making sausage. I don't know if you like sausage.
I love sausage.
Well,
What
there
kind
you
of
go.
sausage is it?
It's pork sausage.
Okay, we can do that.
So, and it's also our Super Bowl.
Okay.
So what we're doing every step of the way to improve the process, we put more staff, more election officers, we double check, we triple check. So we're doing our homework, and what the voter can do is do their homework.
Right.
Bryan, I got a chance serving on the Human Services Council, the Fairfax Human Services Council, for 5 years before I ran for elected office, to get to work, live, breathe the One Fairfax policy and really get to understand what it meant to be able to provide services, to be thinking about all of our neighbors and residents anytime we come up with a policy. So I don't think I've ever shared this before, but the first time I met the fantastic Carla Bruce, I walked up to her and I introduced myself as the person who was going to operationalize One Fairfax at the Circuit Court. So that's why we're doing things like providing satellite service, because we realize transportation is a major equity gap for our residents here in Fairfax County. And it is difficult for people that live in Mount Vernon or Lorton to get all the way to the courthouse that's located on Fairfax County property, but wholly within Fairfax City, right? And it's difficult for people that are in Herndon and Reston to do the same thing. So that's why we identified that area in Reston, an amazing part of Reston that's economically, ethnically diverse, feeds into a Title I elementary school as a great first place for the satellite office. But transportation, childcare, you know, there are many of our neighbors who don't have access to childcare, and we're making it easier for them by finding ways to connect them with the information, connect them with the services. But one of the major ones, I got to tell you, is access to counsel, to legal counsel. If you walk around our building, the Circuit Court and the courthouse, you will see so many of our neighbors that are representing themselves in very important cases. I don't know that most people realize this, but you have a guarantee to counsel in criminal matters, but not in civil cases.
That's right.
So you don't have a guarantee to legal counsel in divorce, in child custody, in child support cases, in eviction cases. Right. But I do want to applaud Fairfax County government and the board for funding an eviction pilot program to help people with counsel in those cases. That's making a big difference, but we still have so far to go.
Yeah, I think the community is just as important as anything else that we do. You know, I talk and preach patriot pressure all the time, and patriot pressure is not just, you know, the way we play and our style of defending. Patriot pressure is, we've got 18 home games at EBA. You know, the more pressure we can put on our opponents, you know, the louder that place can get. It makes it a lot tougher for our opponents. That's part of the winning culture, and I think we're trending in the right direction. You know, we don't beat Dayton last year on our home floor if that place wasn't rocking, and so the expectation this year is to just be able to get that type of a support system.
So you guys, let me just say this for everybody. You're absolutely right. You were 20-12 overall last year. You had 14-3 overall at home. Mm-hmm. You were 8-0 non-conference play, which is where you want to be. Those 3 losses you had at home were points away. They weren't blowouts. They were points away. Like you said earlier.
3 games. Don't remind me. I'm trying to cleanse my mind of last year. But VCU, you know, it was a 1-possession game. Yep. We went 0-16 or 0-18 from 3, something that hasn't been done in you know, a decade plus. We were winning against Duquesne for 39 minutes and 30 seconds. Yep. And then, you know, not St. Bonaventure, but Loyola Chicago. You know, a certain individual heard a certain thing and just went and did something different, and it cost us a corner 3. And so you win 1 or 2 of those possessions, and we're almost flawless at home. So that's how important it is. You can't win at a high level if you don't protect the home floor.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Connect with County Leaders podcast. I thank you for being a follower of the podcast, and I look forward to bringing you many more county leaders in the upcoming year. I'd also like to take this moment and wish you and your family a happy holiday season, as well as a happy new year. I am confident 2025 will be another successful year in Fairfax County, full of exciting opportunities. As always, I look forward to working with our Board of Supervisors, our great county employees, and our residents to make the approaching new year the best it can be for everyone here in Fairfax County. Lastly, I enjoy walking through our halls, and during the holiday season, seeing the festive holiday decorations brings me joy. This year, I challenge agencies to join my office in decorating for the holidays. The most festive office display gets lunch on me. Details will be shared through our normal internal county communication channels. And again, thanks for joining me on this special highlights edition of the podcast. I look forward to being with you again next month on Connect with County Leaders. And I want to give a special thanks to Robert DeMarco.